Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jaden, and today I'm going to be telling you about all 22 books I read in March. The first one was Nero, and I rated that one 3.75 stars. You're going to see that rating a lot this month. So after leaving her patio door open, head mobster Nero walks into Peyton's apartment and her life. So the story starts off immediately, and they're already freaky for each other. Like, they start doing it like 60 pages in, and it was like, dude, chill, I just met you. A lot of this book was me thinking WTF to myself while reading, because what was happening in the book and lines that were written. Like, Nero calls Peyton's blood cherry juice, and her arousal fluids he calls cream. Like, what? Um, there didn't seem to be a plot, or the author forgot about it and decided, oh right, there's supposed to be a plot to this book. Made the third act very action-packed because she remembered. Book was entertaining, and chapters were short. Ending, I am slightly intrigued as it leads to the next book, but I don't know if I'm going to read it yet. Good sex scenes though, and it had really cool stained edges. The second book I read was Wooing the Witch Queen, and I rated this one 3.75 stars as well. So after running away from his family, Archduke Felix heads to Queen Saska's kingdom and pretends to be a dark wizard to hide his identity. So story also starts off immediately, and story's like 280 pages, cool stained edges. Lots of names are thrown out in the beginning, so it was very hard to keep track of what was going on. Saska is supposed to be this like really wicked sorceress, like kind of evil, but we don't really see any kind of evilness from her. Like, there's a few instances from it, but nothing that like screams like dark queen of villainy, you know? Lorelai, who's like part of the Queens of Darkness, Queens of Villainy thing, she's more evil in this book than the main character is, which is very interesting because then we get to her book and she's not that evil at all. I thought Saska and Felix were cute. Something felt anticlimactic, especially since there was build up for a battle. But then it got postponed for the next book. The book synopsis and the cover of the book made it seem like it was gonna be like a smutty romantasy, and it really wasn't. It's just more of a romantasy. There's only like a couple sex scenes, but they're not really graphic at all. So if you think it's like a real full-on spicy book, it's not. I'm just letting you know. First one in series does have a good lead off to the second book. I wish we got more about Felix's background rather than just what we got in the first chapter. I felt rushed, and it would have been nice to know more about him before the plot actually starts off. The third book was Enchanting the Fae Queen, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. So after kidnapping Gerald, Lorelai partners up with him in a Fae tournament in her homeland. So second book in the Queen of Villainy series, and it's also about 280 pages. Didn't like it as much as the first one, because enemies to lovers. Just felt like, oh, Lorelai is supposed to be this big queen of villainy, and she's not really in this book. She was more evil in the first book. Though the juxtaposition of her being like a sunshine character and being evil is interesting. There are POV character changes in middle of chapters in this book. And then some of those POVs get mentioned once and then never get used again. So it's like, what was even the reason? What was the point? Not smutty. Couple sex scenes, but that's about it. That aren't really graphic and get done in like a paragraph. I like the old names to Oberon and Morgana throughout. Thought that was fun. High Priestess thing came out of nowhere for me, especially the ending and how it leads to the third book, which I don't know if I'm gonna read. Also, Gerald's rescue felt anticlimactic for me. I just wish there was more. Both those books, like, oh, it's gonna lead to somewhere, and nope. So just letting you know. After that, I read Helga, and I read that one 3.75 stars. So after being created in a lab, Helga's father leaves straight after for a work conference, and Helga breaks out to learn about the world around her. Solid read that I'm not interested in reading again. It's a gender-switched Frankenstein story. which is well told. Helga's character arc about love I thought was well done, especially with what happens to Clyde as a character. I thought that was interesting, especially in death. He kind of hates Helga, and you can't um, force someone to love you. That both her and her dad had to come to terms with. So I thought that was very interesting. Stuff with Anna kind of came out of nowhere for me. Felt kind of forced. Book overall could have been better. After that, I read the Dead Husband Cookbook, and I read this one 4 stars. So Thea gets the chance of a lifetime to edit her favorite chef's memoir, who may or may not have killed her husband 30 years prior. I saw a read. Some of it was predictable, especially when the twist at the end. I wish Thea's name hadn't been included in the beginning of each chapter, because then we knew, as the book progressed, that a different character was going to take over. I wish it just hadn't had her name, and then boom, then we got that other perspective later, because this one kind of just ruined the twist that we would get another character perspective. I liked the inclusion of the recipes at the end of Maria's book and similar ideas. I did like that Maria was an unreliable author and character, so you never knew what was really going on or what happened to her husband. Enjoyed the book a lot more than I thought I would. Cool cover art as well. After that, I read Superfan, and I also read this one 4 stars. So it's a dual perspective of Minnie, a major fan of the band Hourglass, and Ethan, a member of Hourglass. Solid story that went one way that I wasn't expecting. Dual perspective works really well for the story being told. I hated Nate, especially Clark, and what he does. Wish they got the just desserts, but it made sense because it is very realistic with what happens in those situations. How fan obsession is talked about in the story, I thought was well done, and I could see how some fans can twist some interactions to be one thing when they're actually another. I liked the post after some of the chapters. It told more about fan obsession. One section from a different character does come out of nowhere, and the beginning part of it is hard to understand and never gets mentioned again. Ending was good, but also felt like it came out of nowhere, and was more of a okay. After that, I read He's So Possessed with Me, and I rated this one 3.75 stars. So after a ghostly hand grabs Ren in the forest, Colin starts to notice Ren acting as if he's in love. So the actual book synopsis made me excited for this book, and I ended up being a bit disappointed by it. We don't really discover who Ren is in love with until more than halfway through the book, and then the story ramps up and then rushes through. Explanation was confusing in the beginning, so it made it hard to understand, but it got better. Basically, anything in book synopsis happens in the later half, and possessed Ren acts like he acted beforehand. Involvement in religion I thought was interesting, and I liked that Ren and Colin's relationship, and how it evolved over the book. Beautiful cover, really cool lines as well. I like that it was a good read and did enjoy myself while reading, but I wish it was better. After that, I read Sorcerer Supreme issue 1, and I read this one 3.75 stars. So it's how Wanda became the Sorcerer Supreme and others' reaction to it. So I haven't read any of the story before this one, but you don't really have to know what's going on in this one. Good illustration style, and I like the story so far, even though it was kind of jumpy. I liked that Wanda is doing what she thinks is right rather than what others think. Good cliffhanger that made me want to read more, and I liked the cover as well. Along with that, I read Sorcerer Supreme issue 2, and I rated this one 4 stars. So this is a continuation of issue 1. Story here didn't feel as jumpy as issue 1, and it worked pretty well together. Good artwork, and I like some of the exposition we got about Agatha and Chthon. Contrast between Agatha and Wanda is done pretty well, and I finished it in like 5 minutes. Pretty fast read. Doesn't leave much on the cliffhanger as issue 1, so I don't know if I'm going to read more or want to read more to see what happens next. Along with that, I read Batman Deadpool issue 1, and I read this one 4 stars as well. So tales of DC and Marvel characters meeting and working together. Some of the stories I liked, some of them I didn't, or were disappointed by them, like Batman and Deadpool and Doctor Strange and Constantine. I was most excited for the latter, but it was okay, felt rushed. No bad illustrations. Um, did enjoy seeing X-23 and Nightwing working together along with Miss Marvel and Static Shock. How the universes cross over in the first place I thought was really interesting and only really gets used in Batman and Deadpool. It never gets elaborated or shown more in the other comics, but I wish we got more of it. It was such a really cool idea, and I like that it kept happening. It made sense why it kept happening. I might pick up more of this issue series because I really enjoyed it. After that, I read Ruthless Creatures, and I rated this one 4 stars. So 5 years ago, Natalie's fiance left her on the eve of her wedding, and now Cage, who is part of the Russian mafia, is coming to collect what Natalie's fiance left behind. So the synopsis of the book itself made it seem like Natalie is the debt that Cage has to collect, when it's actually not. It's something tangible, not a person, that he left behind. And so I thought, oh, he's supposed to kill her. He doesn't. He ends up falling for her like instant love. I was like, okay. Other than that, this book is pretty good and enjoyable. I love the color. It's so purple. I love it. Dual perspective, but Cage's POV isn't as prominent as Natalie's. Good sex scenes, like fuck. They're that breakup-ish, but I like what happens afterwards to the characters. I wasn't expecting it. Second to last chapter leads to next book, which I don't know if I'm going to read. There's also a bonus chapter about Cage. But all the information we got earlier in the book, so it was just from his perspective. So it was like, what was the reason for this bonus chapter? It just didn't do anything for me. And it really wasn't necessary, but it was good to read. But I like this book overall. After that, I read a Grim Reaper's Guide to Chaining Death, and I rated this one 4 stars. So, while working at her death-aligned job, Nora finds out her twin brother is supposed to die and does everything in her power to stop it. So, solid read, and it's only like 270 pages. Second book in the series, but you don't have to read the first one to read this one. No confusion, good character arcs for both Charlie and Nora, especially the latter felt relatable. Virgo Bay twist was kind of predictable, and I felt like the story dragged at times. Fun and enjoyable read, and I'm going to read the first one. I did, and I will get to that one later in this video. After that, I read How to Kill a Guy in 10 Dates, and I rated this one 2.5 stars. So Jamie and her friend Lori go to a singles event, but when people around her start getting murdered, she's going to have to put her horror movie tropes to the test. I stopped caring about this book maybe like quarter in. I just didn't care. References to both horror and rom-com movies were just shoved in your face repeatedly, either by Jamie herself or all the character names. Got so annoying. Lady of the Club was confusing. The whodunit was meh. There was a random fucking sex scene in this book, and I'm like, this is not the relevant time. You're being chased by a murderer. Like, no. Oh my gosh. Jamie and Wes were interesting, and I like the different ways that our killer is known as Hard Eyes. When I heard that, all I could think of was the movie that came out last year called Hard Eyes. I liked how he was trying to show his love for Jamie. Plus, I liked how not all the single Avengers were cannon fodder. Like I thought they were all going to be. The book was just a drag to get through. After that, I read Beautiful Bodies, and I rated this one 4 stars. So, Tian has never been allowed to leave her aunt's property after her mother died, but after an incident happens with her fans over a live stream, her aunt sends her to retreat to an island that may have answers to Tian's past. So, from the prologue, the writing sucked me in. It was a solid read. Really good horror elements that had me shocked. Wish it was a bit more graphic, though. Past chapters about Leia and Tian as kids were my favorite parts to read. Subplot of them being on the island retreat of it just kind of drafts off, and I didn't like how the ending was going until the last few pages. I liked how Tian and Leia saved each other in the book multiple times, especially when the book was wrapping. After that, I've read Deadly Ever After, and I rated that one 4.25 stars. So after both dying, Amala and Gadasa must work together in a new land to get to the Colosseum in 5 days. 5 days where their true loves will be waiting for them. Finished in less than a day. Book was very cute, and I liked the cover, especially the colors. Both characters had great arcs throughout. I did like about the small tangent about religion and Amala's God. Wish there had been more talk about that. I loved the oranges line. I thought it was the cutest line in this book. Oh, it was so cute. I loved it so much. Last 30 pages, very fast to finish, with a few twists sprinkled in throughout, even in the last few pages. Just had a lot of fun with this book, and it was very cute. I loved the little enemies, however, but after that, they just fell really fast for each other. After that, I read What Happened That Night, and I rated that one 4 stars. So Tyler asked for all his old college friends to meet up for a reunion 30 years later, after he was sent for a prison for murdering one of them during their college years. So solid to read with short chapters, which I loved. Part of the Maud O'Connor series, but you don't have to read any other ones to read this one. A lot of different POV chapters, which I didn't like, especially since there's no many characters and they all blended together for me. Good book that kept me on my toes, and I liked Tyler's motive for the reunion in the first place. Interesting characters as well. After that, I read Voice of the Ocean, and I rated this one 3.75 stars. When Celeste saves the prince instead of killing him, she gets another chance to do so by joining his pirate crew by becoming human. So this is like a retelling of The Little Mermaid, but written in a new way that feels fresh and new. Small references to the OG story that didn't feel forced. I liked how Raiden knew that she was like a mermaid and a siren straight off, and it wasn't this big secret at the end like the OG story. And none of the rest of the crew thought it was much of a surprise either. Celeste cries so much in this book, and it's like, okay, we get it, you have emotion. Like, people tell you to shut off your emotion. We get it, stop freaking crying. Parts of the book did drag for me, and a lot of stuff gets thrown at you at the end. Ends with a cliffhanger, but I don't know if I'm interested enough to read more. After that, I read Cleopatra, and I read this one 4 stars. So this is a retelling of Cleopatra. So it's a fast read, even though the prose took me a while to get through. Also a lot of fourth wall breaks. On some footnotes, it took me out while reading. Did enjoy the story and had to at times not compare it to another Cleopatra retelling I read last year. This one focused a lot on Cleopatra herself. I know, what concept. What she was feeling and going through. The ending was my favorite part, especially where it leaves Cleopatra and what she's left with. I like the odes to Romeo and Juliet at the end, and it made the fourth wall breaks make more sense, even though they were still annoying. Colors of the cover were pretty, and it just tied the book together. Overall, it was a good read. After that, I read A Grim Reaper's Guide to Catching a Killer, and I rated this one 4.25 stars. When Connor's soul is not where it's supposed to be, Kathy works with him to find out who killed him before he turns into a ghost. The book was very cute, and I liked it a lot more than the sequel that I read earlier. Enjoyed everybody's arcs in the story, especially Kathy and Connor's. Lots of cool and interesting ideas that kept me hooked, and I didn't feel like this one dragged as much. Perfect paced. Whodunit was meh, and the reasoning was also meh, and it didn't really work for me. Kind of out of nowhere, but also felt rushed. Fast read, and I had a fun time reading it. The 20th book I read was The Obsession, and I rated this one 2 stars. When Connie is left home alone for 2 weeks when her sister and her mother go on a trip, Connie starts seeing people where they shouldn't be and might have a stalker. So I finished this in less than a day and ended up being disappointed by it. I have read books by this author before, and I really loved them. And this one was just not good. Vlogging elements were interesting, but I wish we got more of it. The book synopsis made it seem like a big plot point was the main focus of the book, but it only gets discovered in the last third and doesn't actually mean anything to the plot overall. Isla and Connie's mom, who treats their scared relative like that, Like, Connie's calling her mom, like, hey, all this weird stuff's happening. Um, and her mom's like on a trip with her sister to visit colleges, and she's like, well, stop being selfish. Stop being that. Like, what do you mean? Like, you're ruining this for your sister. Why are you doing this? We're not coming home. It's like, what kind of parent acts like that? And like, all of her friends are really concerned that she's being left home alone. She's like 16. But it's like everybody's so concerned for her, and it's like, okay. It just was not a good book. Towards the end was meh, and I liked the last couple of sentences. Interesting plot, but like bad execution. The second to last book I read was Promise Me, and I rated this one 5 stars. So Declan gets in his bet with his sister that he can successfully host a wedding at Barclay Manor. But when that wedding is his ex's, as his ex is one of the grooms, Declan might be trying to get him back. So this is a sequel to Keep Me, but you don't have to read Keep Me to read this one. Part of the Sinful Manor series. I really, really love this book. Oh my gosh. Like, I love it way more than the first one. Finished it around a day because it was so good. Colin's chapters were my favorite, especially the ones about Colin and Declan's past together. Great character development for both characters. Great sex scenes as well, especially with the sub and dom dynamics. Wish there was more. So glad I bought this book because my library had the first one, and this book came out in February, and I had been hoping that the library would have this one, and they have it, and they have it, and they had it, and I just kind of said, screw it, I'm buying it. I'm so glad I did because I loved it so much. So much. I can't wait to read more of the series because this one was just so good. Sarah Kate doesn't really disappoint. It's just so freaking good. And then the last book I read in March was Persephone's Curse, and I rated that one 4 stars. So 4 sisters live as living descendants of Persephone, but when Winnie uses her gift the wrong way, she and her sisters will have to deal with the consequences. So interesting premise that I enjoyed a lot, but the book synopsis made a certain plot point look like the major plot point. And it was going to go one way, but then it went another. I enjoyed all 4 sisters and their talents throughout. I thought how much that Winnie lied from her sisters got really annoying really fast. Also, the ending dragged for me. It could have ended earlier. Like, there were multiple times where it's like, okay, now it's gonna end. Now it's gonna end. Now it's gonna end. And then it finally ended. You're like, oh, thank goodness. How ghosts were used was intriguing, and what the gateways being used were unique. I did enjoy this book, and I never knew what was going to happen next with it. So those were all the books I read in March. If you have any recommendations for me in April, let me know down below. Otherwise, I'll see you next month. Bye.